looking out onto my eyelashes in an agony of delightful anticipation.
Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make.
From the D&E Studios, welcome to the Dracula Podcast. I am your host, Lawrence Burgess, or LB for short. Thank you to my producer, Adam Stover, Rob, and Martha of Southgate Media, and most of all, you for listening. We aim to bring you thoughtful and stimulating media, reviewing the films, books, music, and plays that make Stoker's creations so beloved, criticism to inform your purchasing decisions, interesting guests, and the needs of our communities. Please send us your questions and comments on Facebook at The Dracula Podcast. There you can find the application to play directly into your browser via Libsyn. Amazing. You can go into Facebook, just click, and play our episode. You can also find us on Facebook.com/Dracula Audio, Dracula Audio no spaces on Twitter, or at the Dracula inbox at audio.dracula@gmail.com. Once again, that's Facebook.com and Twitter, Dracula Audio no spaces, or at the inbox at audio.dracula@gmail.com. We will do our best to respond to queries by direct response or on our show. And I'm so happy once again to let you guys know that this podcast is also brought to you by the Foxborough in Charleston, West Virginia. They are the industry leader in scoring, multi-track audio recording, mixing, mastering, production, and graphic design. You can find them on Facebook. Please click and give them a like. You won't go wrong. For queries, please send correspondence to 1007 Bigley Avenue, Suite 319, Charleston, West Virginia 25302. Once again, that's the Foxborough at 1007 Bigley Avenue, Suite 319, Charleston, West Virginia 25302. My dear friend Greg Hunt owns and operates the Foxborough. Not only are they the industry leader, but the proof is in the pudding. 2 of the top 10 albums released in West Virginia were produced by Greg Hunt, and not to mention that, they've also had the Renfields, the Big Bad, the Jasons, and guess what? His best work is yet to come. He just finished production in Boots, but right now, he is in post-production on Of Blood and Bloom, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the soundtrack to Dracula the audio drama. My partner in crime, Adam Stover, he is the musical supervisor of Blood and Bloom, and it's an overall amazing process. You've heard Greg before. You know how smart he is. Just wait till you hear the music. Folks, welcome. I really appreciate you all for joining and listening in. You guys are the best. Again, you're the sexiest audience in the history of mankind. So get up and take a bow. We hope you took a chance to listen to our previous episodes. If not, check out the Southgate Media homepage at southgatemediagroup.com. That's southgatemediagroup.com. There you can find us everywhere. We're on iTunes, we're on Libsyn, we're on Stitcher, and we're all over the place around the friendly interwebs. And ladies and gentlemen, 2 days before Cinco de Mayo, on May the 3rd at 10 p.m. on Showtime, the 10-episode second season of Penny Dreadful premieres. Yes, Ava Green, Josh Hartnett, and Timothy Dalton in all their glory. Again, the 10-episode second season of Penny Dreadful premieres on May 3rd, 10 p.m. on Showtime. We're going to prepare you for the second season. As we've been doing so, we've been touching on each episode of Penny Dreadful chronologically. We're on episode number 5. Spoilers ahead. This podcast is notorious for promoting Penny Dreadful, and my suggestion for you has been to buy the Blu-ray. I have no idea why you haven't, but if you know a friend who hasn't gotten the Blu-ray, chastise them. Tell them about the value. Tell them about the quality of story. This isn't things that you find in media. Most of the stuff, honestly, you can forget about, and it's just filler, and there's no consequence. There's no character depth. There are no arcs. It simply is. But Penny Dreadful is a show that delves into the love and the life of literature, the great characters of Dorian Gray, Dracula, Frankenstein, and so many more. If you've seen the trailers on YouTube, you know what's coming, and if you haven't looked on YouTube, Check it out. There's behind the scenes footage. There are interviews. There are clips all throughout the first season. So you know that this isn't just bluster. We don't promote garbage on the Dracula podcast. We tell you how it is. We give it to you straight. We give it to you 100. And that's why our ratings are going up and up and up. And folks, we appreciate you so much. And spotlighting communications from the Dracula inbox, Katie from Charleston, West Virginia writes, are you going to look into the Hammer franchise? Actually, Katie, we started that last episode. John Johnson is my special guest, and he will be continuing to join us with every single film in the franchise. Last week, we touched on The Horror of Dracula, which was released in 1958. It does indeed get the Dracula podcast seal of approval. If you want to purchase it, do it on Blu-ray. However, be warned, it is an out-of-region disc, so you're either going to have to get an out-of-region Blu-ray player or unfortunately wait for Warner Home Video to release it here in the US because they have the rights. It isn't a simple thing with the Hammer horror films and Dracula. A bunch of different production companies have the rights to various projects. The Satanic Rites of Dracula, for example, is a public domain film to the best of my knowledge. Dracula Prince of Darkness has already been released in Blu-ray. And a few others are actually available in DVD packs. So yes, we are going to continue today, starting with the Brides of Dracula. And thank you, Katie, for listening. And Jason in Columbus, Ohio writes, do you have any suggestions for reading other than Stoker's book? Well, Jason, we actually touched on a previous episode on The Night in a Lonesome October. It might seem like it's for kids, but it's not. It's an extremely informative and deep narrative experience. Other books that you might want to check into are The Historian, which is by Elizabeth Kostova. Fred Saberhagen has a Dracula series. I've read the first two, which are the Dracula tape, and the second book is the Holmes Dracula file. Takes the point of view of the Count himself. Another interesting one is a graphic novel called Death Ship, in which the entire narrative takes place on the Demeter. That actually is my favorite sequence of the Dracula book, and it goes into the captain and what he has to go through and the crew while this thing is aboard the ship. Another one, if you're DC fans, an interesting read will be Batman Dracula Red Rain. This is an Other Worlds book. It's not canon. It is interesting. Batman versus Dracula might not seem like a fair fight on the surface, but as you know, Batman does have a tendency to slip out of sticky situations. And thank you once again for listening. All right. You ready? Yes, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's news from around the globe. Unfortunately, there is a film starring Adam Sandler, which perhaps might be considered part of the Dracula canon by some, which is getting a sequel. The film is animated, and that's all the hints I'm going to give you. No, I haven't watched said film. No, will I watch said sequel. It's Adam Sandler, and it's animated. That's all we need to know. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, we want to remind you about the Bram Stoker Film Festival. You can get information at bramstokerfilmfestival.com. It takes place Thursday the 22nd through Sunday the 25th of October at Spa Pavilion in Whitby. Yes, that Whitby, the inspiration for Dracula the novel. It features over 40 films and lots more, including Fields of Nephilium, VNV Nation, Goth Minister, Joe Black, and so much more. They're very good and open about talking to their fans. You could purchase tickets right now. There's a gallery, a store, a history, the logo, the location itself, and specific events. So go check that out. That's the bramstokerfilmfestival.com in late October. And circling through horror conventions, this comes from the Bram Stoker Estate. It is a multimedia presentation called Stoker on Stoker. Bram Stoker, the man and the literature. It's a multimedia presentation with Dacre Stoker. He is the managing partner to the Bram Stoker Estate, and guess what, folks? He's the co-author of Dracula the Undead, the sequel to the Bram Stoker original classic Dracula. So take a look at that. There should be videos, audio, very interesting insight. And Dacre Stoker is an extremely interesting and very kind fellow. He's been nothing but nice to us. But if you go around and look at the videos, he's got a lot of insight that most folks don't have. So go ahead and check that out. If you see Stoker on Stoker, book your trip, take advantage, and you won't go wrong. And once again, folks, we want to remind you about the Dracula Festival. That's the 2nd and 3rd of May in Corvin's Castle in Romania. Tons of things. Dacre Stoker is going to be there. We'll have a film projection of Dracula, a medieval theater violin concert, archery, sword lessons, medieval fights, tournaments, Dracula Meet the King film premiere, a vampire ball taking place on the 2nd of May, and so much more. That's the 2nd and 3rd of May, 2015, Corvin's Castle, Romania, and that's via the Victorian Vampire Society in the UK. And folks, we're going a little bit out of sequence this episode for our causes section. And the cause we're spotlighting this episode is from GoFundMe. And specifically, it's the SCAR, or SCAR, Critical Care Program Fund. And it's based out of Brooklyn, New York. Specifically, it's the Sean Casey Animal Rescue Incorporated. Since 1998, over 8,000 animals from New York's Animal Shelter and Control, they've been helping with rescue efforts. And if you're an animal lover, cat or dog, or bird, or any of our feathered or furry friends, they don't really have a voice. And most times they don't have voices at all. And we love animals here on the Dracula podcast. I'm a proud pet owner. But if you've owned pets, you realize how important it is. You can go to GoFundMe.com, find the SCAR, and donate. You can donate any amount you want to. This is an open end. Their goal right now is $100,000. And folks, it's not going to go to waste. The address is www.gofundme.com/SCAR-CCPF. That's www.gofundme.com/S as in Sam, C as in Carl, A as in Adam, R as in Ray, -C as in Carl, C as in Carl, P as in Phil, and F as in Frank. Folks, go take care of them and send some love to our furry friends. And if you don't want to donate to them, go to your local animal shelter and pick up a friend. There are tons of furry friends. Here in Charleston, West Virginia, we recently had a terrible landslide in which animals had to be evacuated. So if you're listening in the Charleston, West Virginia metro area, go to these humane societies. Pick up one of these guys. They're good for your physical and mental health. They're wonderful companions. Go out and please extend a loving hand to someone in need. Alright, folks, here it is. This is our subcast, Casting Dread, the Penny Dreadful Show. The 5th episode of Penny Dreadful is entitled Closer Than Sisters. It was written by John Logan and directed by Koki Giedroyk. And now it's time for a little story. We open to Vanessa alone, writing. She is writing to her best beloved friend Mina, and has done so every day, an endless stream of words. She remembers. She remembers as two girls run across the beach, Vanessa enthused and Mina timid, yet they are the best of friends. Two great properties lie next to each other. Vanessa visiting Mina's house is ritual. In the solarium, Mina and her brother Peter are stuffing animals. The girls discuss their future husbands. Peter won't be there to marry Vanessa, as he will be in Africa with his father. Sir Malcolm then returns from another expedition, politely greeting Peter and his wife, but warmly embracing Mina and Vanessa. At dinner, Sir Malcolm regales the two families with tales of cannibals from Africa. Yet Vanessa senses something underneath the surface. That night in the hedge maze, she hears something, expecting it to be Peter and Mina playing a trick on her. Yet what she finds is Sir Malcolm and her own mother, mounting each other. Oh no. Yet oddly enough, Vanessa enjoyed it. As she says her prayer, she heard a whisper of something in her, something awakening. Even when sitting with Mina, small acts of wickedness begin to become trivial. As Vanessa and Mina grew into adulthood, they each grow lovely. Mina is the first to find her love, a Captain Branston, thick-mustached and a decorated officer. Vanessa and Peter are affectionate to each other, but Vanessa is jealous, for Mina will be going to India with Captain Branston and will be the first to know a man's touch, as she is to marry on the morrow. In the hedge maze, Peter will be going to Africa to gain his father's respect, and Vanessa will be alone. She kisses him, but he resists her. She is torn apart not because she will be alone, but because she knows that Peter will die. While resting with Mina, Vanessa awakens and descends to find Captain Branson. Then she leads him into the solarium amongst the stuffed animals. She seduces him and he takes her on the table. As the foul act continues, Mina appears and they lock eyes. Mina is heartbroken. The next day, Vanessa wants to make amends, but Sir Malcolm seals the door between their two properties. He did not know his family would be destroyed by a cruel girl. Then Vanessa faints. She is taken over by something. Depression, mental illness, or something else. As she fails to eat, she is taken to an institution to meet the doctor. The doctor questions her in private. She then tells of men drowning on a slave ship and souls burning. She knows the doctor's name, though he never gave it to her. She doesn't know the name Vanessa. Then she attacks him, lunging at his throat. She is forcibly taken away and institutionalized. She is sprayed, given cold ice baths, and finally lobotomized. When returning home, she is a shell. Peter visits her as he is going to Africa. Her quiet pleas are to no avail. He leaves. Alone in her bedroom, she is visited by Sir Malcolm, and yet she knows it is not him. It is a serpent, a deceiver, a prince of darkness. She wants nothing to do with him. He tells her that she could have shut him out at any time. Yet when the darkness spoke, she listened, and then she allows him to take her. Downstairs, Vanessa's mother hears noises. She ascends. Then she sees her daughter, naked, savaging the air itself on the bed. Then Vanessa locks eyes with her mother, with only the whites of her eyes staring back. Vanessa's mother cannot stand the sight and falls over, dead. After the funeral, Vanessa walks on the beach. She is approached by Mina. Mina tells her that she doesn't blame her, for Vanessa has suffered enough. She is married to Mr. Harker now, yet she wonders why Vanessa didn't stop Peter from going to Africa in the hedge maze. Vanessa wonders how she would know that. Mina's eyes turn red and she says that the master has taught her much, things no one should ever know. Then Mina comes to her senses, pleading with Vanessa to save her, before she is taken by the wind itself. Vanessa goes to Sir Malcolm's house and tells him that Mina needs them. After some hesitation, Sir Malcolm tells her that he will not forgive her, but they will face the darkness together. His home is now her home. Vanessa finishes the letter to Mina, saying that her guilt will follow her through all time. She knows that Sir Malcolm loves her enough to save her, but she loves her enough to kill her. Though Vanessa's past is finally revealed, questions loom. It is evident that Vanessa did not imagine the presence in her, but what is it? Will Vanessa's own guilt destroy her before the presence does? And where is Mina? And does she still live? These are questions we will try to answer next time. Folks, we hope you've enjoyed our bit of storytelling. That was the 5th episode of Penny Dreadful, entitled Closer Than Sisters. The only negative is that the episode isn't longer, because this story is so fascinating. We also get a glimpse, though false, of the being in her in the form of Sir Malcolm. It's vicious and brutal. Yet there is no stronger motivation than retribution in love, and Vanessa faces both in her quest to save Mina. The cinematography is flawless, the costumes perfect, beautiful script. The story is tragically sexual, kind, sad, and it longs for hope. It's everything what a story should be, and other television shows should take notes. This isn't a waste of your time, ladies and gentlemen. It's beautiful theater. Take notice and take advantage of it. All right, folks, we're back at the Dracula podcast. We hope you enjoyed our subcast Casting Dread, the Penny Dreadful Show. But now it's time for our media review portion of the show, or as Professor Van Helsing calls it,
the ghastly paraphernalia of our beneficial trade.
Every time. Old Van nails it every single time. As we told you last episode, we're going through the Hammer horror series featuring Dracula. It began in 1958, and today we're continuing on with the series. We brought back our special guest, John Johnson, and we're going into that right now.
So the next film is actually 2 years later. It's The Brides of Dracula. Fortunately, it was directed by Terence Fisher and also written by Jimmy Sangster. The Brides of Dracula is also notable, unfortunately, because of what?
There's an absence of a very important character, especially where the title is concerned. And that would be Dracula.
Why do you think they tried to call it Brides of Dracula? Do you think that audiences were so naive to just see the movie because it was called Dracula, even that Lee wasn't in it?
Well, you know, this is one of the films that you don't read very much about because of the fact that Lee wasn't in it. But I wonder what, and this is just my own thinking, I wonder what it was about this film. Could it have originally been planned for Christopher to be in, and perhaps something happened? And
I believe I've read that somewhere. Christopher Lee had a biography, and its first edition was called Tall, Dark, and Gruesome. And I believe that was their intent.
Right.
But later on, Christopher had some problems with the studio, and honestly, I think part of it was because they departed so far from Stoker.
Yes, yes.
So there was a lot of conflict there.
But
so,
you know, Cushing hanging off of the windmill, I mean, that is a great way to kill a vampire.
So talk about what you liked about this movie.
That was one of the things I did like, was the creativity. I mean, we've already seen Dracula die because of the ray of light, you know, with Cushing running down the library table and grabbing a hold of the curtains and pulling them down and the light hitting Dracula and all. In this one, of course, the windmill he pulls the windmill down and makes the shape of a cross. I loved Cushing in this one. Like I said, you know, I'm a Cushing fan anyway, so he could have done anything. I felt that the story overall was a bit weak, especially coming right out of Dracula. But I did like what they did with Van Helsing, and it was an excellent way of building on that character that they would continue to use throughout the series.
What I liked about this movie was, I actually think overall the performances were better than Horror of Dracula, but the story itself was weaker.
I can agree with that, yeah.
The reason why I say that is because it's actually a little spookier than Horror of Dracula, because you have the girls going in on Van Helsing, and also, if you recall, Baron Meinster turned his mother into a vampire.
Yes, he did.
Perhaps a little bit of the Oedipus complex played into the screenplay?
Maybe so. I would say so, yes.
I mean, he was locked up, so there's a little bit of that subtext going on. I thought the acting was solid. It felt at times a little slow, but a lot of the movies of the 50s and 60s were. But I actually give it a thumbs up, and I like it equally just as much as Horror of Dracula. I give it the Dracula Podcast seal of approval.
Excellent.
So we're moving on to the third film. It was also directed by Terence Fisher. They were very fortunate to have such a solid director on 3 films in a franchise.
Well, Terence Fisher became a legend in the Hammer films. I mean, there were so many films that he did.
How many times has that happened, though? You've had the same director in a franchise. Godfather, the Dark Knight trilogy, the first 3 films of the Hammer series.
Carl Laemmle, back in the Universal days.
He was producer, though.
Well, yeah, but
But as the director...
A director, yes.
There's so... The Sherlock Holmes movies
Roy William Neal.
Yes, he directed tons and tons of those, but those are really the only exception. Those are really the only ones I can think of that have the same director.
Well, of course, he passed away right after the series was completed.
True.
So
we're getting into Prince of Darkness.
Yes.
It was written once again by Jimmy Sangster, and then the newcomer Anthony Hines also co-wrote it. This is also a very interesting film in that Christopher Lee spoke no lines.
Absolutely
Can you elaborate on that?
the dialogue that was given to Mr. Lee, according to what I've read, was of the sort that it was absolutely insane, the things that they wanted him to say. It was so far from Stoker that he refused to speak. He completely refused to speak. And, I am the apocalypse, those types of lines. And I don't blame him one bit. And quite frankly, I think this is probably the most menacing of the series in his presence and so forth, because there is no language. It's all him.
I'm a big believer in silence. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if you noticed that, but when we did Dracula, the audio drama, there are periods of very poignant silence.
Yes.
And I think that Christopher Lee's silence made this film better than what it was. I think the brutalness of which Dracula was resurrected also gave to it. There were points in the story that I didn't really like. I thought the very beginning of it was a little much. But as it went on, I liked it. I thought it paced itself really well.
Yeah.
I liked the brutalness of the priest. They gave Renfield a little nod with that character.
Yes.
Tell me what you think about it.
Well, I mean, it's like I've told you before. That was one of the first screen outings that I ever saw at 4 years old of Dracula. I mean, it messed with me. I had dreams and nightmares about Christopher Lee coming in as Dracula into our house. But anyways, beyond that, I mean, the performances I felt were good. Christopher Lee, absolutely solid. With Christopher Lee, though, it's hard for me to find a really bad performance. He's one of those actors, and I'm biased. I know that. Mm-hmm. And if Sir Christopher listens to this podcast, thank you so much for the talent that you put into everything that you do. It's just one of those memorable movies, and it sticks with you. Very clever at the end with how they dispatched of the poor Count. And I also like the fact that they brought him back in. Now, this is several years after he had died in The Horror of Dracula. They used that ending sequence from The Horror of Dracula to start the film, and so you had the Van Helsing connection as well, and it was really good. They did a good job at tying the loose ends, I think, but they also were very creative in how they dealt with it. It kept the franchise going.
I actually like Prince of Darkness better than I like Horror of Dracula because of the silences, because of the supporting characters.
Much more atmospheric.
It is. The art direction was a little better. Mm-hmm. I think the cinematography was slightly worse, but the art direction was better and the supporting cast was better.
Yeah.
So it does indeed get the Dracula podcast seal of approval.
And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You got a twofer. Brides of Dracula and Dracula Prince of Darkness. Both available on Blue. Brides of Dracula, once again, unfortunately, is a Region B Blu-ray. So if you want to consume that, you're going to have to get a region-free Blu-ray player. Prince of Darkness, fortunately, is available here in the States. Pick that up. It's a very decent watch. We're also going to continue on with our Hammer series on the next episode. If you're following along and familiar with the series, there shouldn't be any surprises when it comes to the chronology of the thing. Folks, that's all I have for today. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate it. We've got the best audience and the best response we can possibly get. This podcast is amazing, and it's because you make it amazing. And for that, and most importantly, to you and yours, have an excellent day.